I can't be sorry. See, I used to carry guilt like armor, apologizing for the way I grew, the things I outgrew, for the people who left when I stopped dimming my light. I can't be sorry anymore. I can't be sorry for those I lost along the way. Not because I didn't care, I did. But because I finally started caring about myself. I can't be sorry for old conversations, rooms that echoed but never truly heard me. Friendships built on a version of me that's long dead. I can't be sorry for choosing peace over approval, stillness over chaos, truth over comfort. Believe me, it's a mistake I've made. I tried to explain, to even shrink. I've twisted myself into 1,000 shapes just to make sure no one around me felt uncomfortable, to make sure the externalities were aligned. But I've learned that the people who truly love you, well, they don't need you to vanish to accept you. And I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. There's no resentment. I'm just not sorry. I'm not sorry for the evolution that took place. I'm not sorry for dreaming bigger. I'm not sorry for asking more of myself and my life. And if that makes me hard to figure out or understand, then so be it. Because I can't apologize for becoming someone I'm proud of. I can't apologize for the silence I now protect like gold. I can't apologize for walking away from anything that required me to be less than whole. See, growth is messy. It leaves behind fragments. It burns bridges that were only ever meant to take you part of the way there. And still, I move forward. Carry no hate, but simultaneously no shame, because I can't be sorry, not anymore. And if that makes the world uncomfortable, that's okay. Because for the first time in a long time, I'm truly here. And for that, I can't be sorry. Do you ever wonder how much of you has materialized? Like if what F. Scott Fitzgerald says is true and our lives are defined by opportunity, even the ones we miss, then how much remains in the ether? And I don't think it's about playing a game of what if. That would be endless. It would be self-defeating. No one's perfect. I don't even really think it's about making a right turn instead of a left. Because as long as you're moving, and moving with conviction, life ultimately brings you where you need to be. But more, my concern is the steps never brought to pavement. My ideas unhatched, my opportunities I either knowingly or unknowingly left on the shelf. Because it didn't seem real enough. Like a Broadway play between my ears that as a spectator I knew would end. After all, that's what stories do. How much of ourselves have we cast aside as simply the things we don't say out loud? At first, it's infinite. We've yet to be taught to limit because limits aren't things, they're ideas, and ideas must be adopted. That's why they say some of life's best things were done by people too ignorant to know they were impossible, too naive of the notion that they couldn't say them out loud. Then it's comparison. They have what I want, but it was meant for them and not me. How delusional to think I could have it. How crazy to think that life has yet to be written, and I am an author. My date is with normalcy in the box where I keep those things we don't say out loud, and then we look around and we see highlight reels, we see awards and vacations and smiles, but we don't stop to think maybe they're just like me. Maybe they're people who struggle and question themselves and doubt the road ahead. No, it must be the paths diverged. They took happiness and I took those things we don't say out loud. And then there's everyday life when things don't go as planned, when the world presents curveballs and you haven't learned to hit off speed, so you feel small and you feel inadequate and ill-equipped, and you could reach out, but that's not cool, that's not right. That's something that you don't say out loud, but we keep it in, like all in, and eventually it becomes the if-onlys and I wish I hads. It's the quiet envy gazing longingly towards those who just cared less, who realize maybe life's not as serious as we make it out to be, who turn thoughts to things not by burying but by embodying them. And maybe that's the trick, to unlock the gate, keeping your perceived reality from the possibility of a new one, the one you could create if only you promoted your fleeting thoughts to forward progress. See, dreams can fail to come to fruition in two places, in your head and outside of it. But at least outside it has a chance. At least outside you can take the common, normal, everyday background and make it the backdrop to your movie, where you play a lead role. But it must be accepted and acknowledged, not thought of or even whispered, but screamed, so that the details and the trivialities that exist now work for you. That's right, they are now yours. Not because you thought about it, but because you reached out a hand and you took. You asked the world for something. And in life, it will always be true that you don't get what you do not ask for. So when you find yourself staring up a wall comprised of self-defeating narratives and manufactured limits, be ignorant, be irrational, be the reason your dreams have a chance. And when you look around and you see more and wonder why you don't have it, know that you can. You're allowed to. If you sacrifice, you will, but you must believe you are worthy of it. Not in the back of your head where you keep your locker combo and movie quotes, but in reality, where words bounce off lips. And when you feel like life is treating you unfairly, like they're happier or have it better, know that life is peaks and valleys, not just for you, but for everyone. And how you internalize that and carry on makes the difference. And when you feel lost or stuck, you are not hopeless, but in progress. Being broken down so that you can be reconstructed, stronger, better. Victory is not in hiding those struggles, but accepting them as the difference, as the reason you created the miraculous. Not because you had dreams, but because you said them out loud. I woke up last night and I remembered my debt to you. Being that I stand by the promises that I make, I jumped out of bed and I walked over to my desk, I turned on a light, and I began writing. At a minimum, to explain myself, but at best case scenario, to provide some reassurance that every storm ends, that nothing is forever, and that someday, without question, I'll make you proud. See, things haven't been the easiest lately, and it's funny. Sometimes things seem so intuitive. Sometimes they make so much sense. And then sometimes it feels like you open up a novel right in the middle and it's in a language you can't read. You know, life feels more complex than it really is, and I feel smaller than I really am, but don't be concerned. I've fought my way through worse. I promise you, you'll be satisfied with the result. And yeah, you might have noticed that sometimes I face the obstacle of of juggling two sets of standards, two definitions of success, mine and the world. What I love and what matters to me versus what will increase my status, my standing in society. And honestly, it pulls me in two different directions sometimes. Makes me think back to years past and that discomfort I've experienced, standing on an empty foundation, but believing someday something meaningful would stand there. Realizing that when you put your head down and when you block out the noise, you can finally hear the most powerful voice of all, your own. That's why you take L's in the short term, to acquire meaning in the long term. I've found that courage before, and I'll find it again any second now. Don't you worry. And sure, you might have seen that every once in a while I forget about life's abundance. I just do. I know it's true, but it feels sometimes like the world pushes me to forget. I start comparing myself to other people, and I start thinking about what I could lose, what people might say, about what could go wrong. And it's like, sure, I know I'm the gatekeeper to my own mind. I understand that. In fact, I cherish the idea. But I guess sometimes doubt catches that gatekeeper napping and slips through. I always catch him eventually, though. I've had doubts before, and really all I did was keep moving by them. Kind of like that time I went snorkeling in Key Largo. You had to make your way through this jellyfish field to see an underwater statue. My first thought was, this is crazy. But then you move in and you realize they just exist. They don't have control or an agenda. And if you find the courage, they become meaningless. You can float right by them. So don't worry, I'll swim through and you'll see me on the other end. And I will catch that view. Not for Facebook or for Instagram. Because in a way I owe it to myself and I owe it to you. I didn't make these promises to run when things got challenging. I made them because they meant something. And yeah, from the outside in, things are not perfect. I get that. I understand. But if you just hang tight, if you just remember that I've been there before. I've climbed out. I've come back. In fact, the deeper the valley and the darker the night, the clearer the answer always becomes when I emerge. And it may be a journey, but however long it takes, I've gotten there. And I have to admit, yeah, it feels funny writing a letter to myself, but I need you now more than ever. You've always been my toughest critic, and I appreciate that, but now I need you to be my biggest fan. To remind me that life can be confusing and seemingly contradictory, uncertain, and even chaotic. But that doesn't mean I'm not right where I need to be, right where we need to be. And if you'll just believe in me, if you'll hop along for this ride, you'll see that as sure as I'm sitting here writing to you now, I will make you proud. I've come to accept the fact that I'm a loser. And the more people say otherwise, the more I prove over and over again that it's just who I am. Stuck in my ways, an outsider, outcast, out of my mind, loser. See, it started with my old identity. Who I used to be, yeah, I lost that. Then I lost those people that made me feel small, the ones holding me back. Bye. Would the streak continue? You bet. Lost that need to please others. Hey, turns out I know what's best for me better than they do. Lost the things being done out of obligation and not purpose. Lost the wrong metrics I was using to measure success. Gone. Lost my way so that I might find something better. That was hard. Thought I might lose my mind, but I found it. Just lost my old way of thinking, and hey, that's a win. Lost yesterday, found tomorrow. Lost scarcity, but found abundance. I lost too the people who were more talented, better skilled, the ones who outclassed me. Fine. Showed me what it took to win. I lost my heart a few times. That sucked, but looks like it still works, so we're good. I lost my purpose, followed the shiny objects instead of the things that matter, but sometimes seeing what doesn't shine puts a spotlight on what does. Keeps me swinging from star to star, and hey, I like it up there. I lose my discipline from time to time, but hey, regret hurts more, so I force myself to find it. As I write this out, speak it into existence, I'm losing track of time. All is forgotten, but I think that's how it should be. I hope I lose more tomorrow. Yeah, I lose a lot. Thank God. There's a saying that some people feel the rain, others just get wet. I've always found this interesting, this idea how the same subject, same situation, or occurrence can be interpreted so differently, right? It can plant the seeds for such different outcomes. Like Kishimi and Koga mention in their book, The Courage to be Disliked, well water is 60 degrees, and it's always 60 degrees. In the summer and the winter, but depending on what time of year, right, the makeup of the outside world, that 60 degrees feels different. The water didn't change, its circumstances did, and our thoughts are no different. It's not the world that writes the story, we do. And every second, moment, day is merely an interpretation. Does time tick by? Or is it driven into a state of flow? Is it transformed into something more? Was losing an indicator that, hey, maybe you're not good enough? Or is it your motivation to be better than you've ever been? Is your day an allegiance to the present or an invitation to chase down tomorrow? See, the world doesn't get to tell the tale. The world is paper, it's ink, it's ideas. The world is everything you need to decide how your story's going to go. How does he see the world? How does she define reality? That's the question. Because you don't need to change the world, you need to change the way you see it. And you don't need to change who you are. You need to change the imaginary shackles you've placed around your ankles that are limiting the heights you could reach. In fact, the world, as far as I'm concerned, is an accumulation of thoughts, ideas. It's 8 billion individualized movie screens attempting to interact, to coexist together. And when you look at it like that, it's not that your mindset plays a role or it's kind of important. No, it's that it narrates the play. It's the glue that ties everything together. What you see is what you get. And this isn't a one and done thing, it's an everyday thing. Because there's always going to be occurrences in our lives that challenge us, that threaten our understanding of who we are and what we're capable of. There will always be the temptation to make the opportunity into the problem and the hero into the villain. But why forfeit that control? I remember hearing that if you find time to be grateful, both in the morning and at night, it changes your life. Not because the world transforms, but because it reinforces the perspective you need. We are lucky to be here. We're lucky to have challenges that push us forward. Lucky to have ups and downs that bring us closer to the people in our lives. We're lucky that chaos and discomfort open a door for transformation on the other side. And look, I get life isn't perfect. and not everything can be great all the time. But I do believe that if we can bring ourselves to stop, to breathe, to even focus briefly, we can find value in any situation. What's in front of you, it exists, right? It's the well water. You can't go back in time or remake the obstacle at your feet, but you can always decide how to make that work for you. And that's a superpower. And I use that. I use it when my short-term ideas or videos or projects underperform. I use it when people let me down. I use it when in the moment I'm either under or overwhelmed. The question, where is the win? In this spot, this situation where most would hang their heads and let the outside world rewrite the story, how can I find a way to hold mine high and maintain my own accountability? Extreme differences in life outcomes are so often prompted by such subtle realizations, subtle decisions. Their reason to stop could be your reason to not only carry on, but thrive. And the best news is you don't need approval or authorization. You don't need the stars to align or doors to open up. You just need to give yourself permission to see the sun amidst the clouds, the hope amidst the doubt. You have to remind yourself that there is always something to cling to, always a second chance. There is always a win. All you have to do is choose to see it. Found a quote the other day. It said, "Time heals nothing unless you move along with it." And I thought, well, that makes perfect sense. Right? You can't pursue a new reality, a new world, unless you can detach and depart from the current one. But that's in theory. And my question was, is it the destination or the path that holds us back? Because in my experience, the greatest struggle in life, it isn't what to do, it's knowing how to do it. How do we get there? We know we need to get back up, but how? How do we initiate a spark and create momentum and take that world of black and white and add color? Because those times of gray, when life seems to lose its purpose, we find ourselves simply existing and not living. That's when we need answers. And I guess this quote, it jumped out at me because it prompted an equally important question, right? Which is, now what? And I started thinking a few years back, 2017. Probably the most difficult year of my life. It was void of, any of that beautiful nuance, the uplifting moments that we like to remember when we look back. For me, it was, essentially an ended relationship. It was relocating away from family and friends. Was having a few dollars in my bank account, everything I own in a trailer, and starting over. And what I'll never forget about that experience, in totality, was that I saw it colorless, bland, dark. Essentially, the road ahead had lost that glimmer that it once had. See, I used to get so much joy in telling stories, but life had kicked me around so hard that I, at least for the moment, forgot the point. Like, what was my reason? And I knew, like I said, what I had to do, but I couldn't wrap my arms around the how. How do you get the train moving again? And then I got this email, right? And I'm gonna paint a picture for you. New apartment, trash, there's stuff everywhere, suitcases open. I hadn't shaved in 2 weeks. I'm exhausted, couldn't sleep, sitting there frustrated with my laptop. And the email is basically someone looking to create a documentary, asking if they could stay with me for 3 days and create a film about always maintaining discipline and living a productive life. And I just erupted into laughter, right? I don't think Seinfeld could have written something more ironic. It made no sense. But it caused me to reflect, right? I obviously declined the video. It just wouldn't have felt right or accurate in that moment. But I started to think how is there such a gap between the old me and who I was sitting on that bed? Is this the new me? And if it's not, why have I allowed this imposter to stay so long? I've always said a life change is one decision away, a light switch away. Just reach out and find it. And when you're going through times like this, it's funny, life has a way of doing its best to conceal the beauty. It's like it becomes this black and white painting, and it stays that way. It stays that way until you put color into it, one brushstroke at a time. Because life is intimidating when you see everything you're not, when the blank canvas feels like emptiness and not opportunity. But life doesn't require of you the whole picture. Masterpieces, they aren't made overnight. They're not instantaneous. They are a product of trust, of faith. Not in the canvas or the brush, but in the artist. Through his eyes, he's capable of transforming his experience into art, his misfortune into meaning. Viktor Frankl uses the metaphor of a movie, each day being its own scene, where often they don't even come together until the very last act. Trust that. Believe that. But man, start painting. And the very next morning, like everyone before it, I woke up to a yellow beam of light, making its way through a crack in the blinds, painting the wall of an otherwise dimly lit room. But this time I saw it. This time I didn't close the blinds, I opened my eyes. And sometimes that alone is the little hinge that swings a big door, a door that I walked through. And I saw the green of the palm trees, the beauty, the simplicity, and thought, how lucky am I to be where I am when I am. I saw a blue sky, a miracle in its own right, that's not confined to story or narrative, and well, maybe I'm not either. The white of the sidewalk leading me to wherever I choose to go next. The red of my running shoes hitting the pavement, the gold of the sun bouncing off the buildings, the black of a cup of warm coffee as I soak in the day, and the teal chandelier that hangs over the horizon as the same sun that started it all retreats after a hard day's work. See, you have everything you need, and life is not always perfect, but it is always what you make it. How things are is not how they should be or need to be, but how you've allowed them to be. And most importantly, black and white does not describe reality so much as it describes what's not there, what's missing from reality. And my hope is to never conform to that sketch or outline that masquerades as truth, but to see beyond it. To find the strength, the courage, the self-belief to pick up the brush and live life in color. Yesterday I drove out a little bit into North Carolina, parked the car, found a path, and went on a long hike to take in some scenery, think about life holistically, kind of contemplate where I'd go from here and why it matters. Which is always funny to think about, right? The idea of having to carve out time amidst our frantic and often chaotic journey to get somewhere, to, well, define where somewhere is. But I think about that a lot. Our days consist of so much running around that I can easily forget what even my calculated decisions add up to. Why? It's a simple enough question, perhaps one I could ask more. Why? What's with this whole get comfortable with discomfort thing? Why do I place so much emphasis on the quote-unquote path less traveled? which is a term that, one of my buddies was recently giving me a hard time about using in all my speeches, right? It must mean something to me. It's got me here. But is here better than over there? After all, it's not out of the realm of possibility that I'm the one who's missing the mark. And it's okay to examine that possibility. In fact, that's why I'm here. And I bounced this around in my head as I made my way up the trail and noticed as I looked around, everything just felt perfect. Have you ever had one of those moments where it just seems surreal? The morning was incredible. I loved the sound of the earth under my feet as I took each step, the chirping of the birds in the early morning, the sun making its way through the trees. And I thought, it's amazing that you can live 20 minutes from this feeling and just never experience it. I guess proof that a decision to not go, to do nothing, is still very much a decision. And in this case would have been the less desirable one. I'm glad I went. My phone was in my backpack, and for the first time in a while, I didn't even think about it. My mind was stimulated. My senses were taking in something new, something different, something not my studio or laptop or social media analytics pages. In fact, all that stuff felt kind of trivial now that I was removed from it. And I wondered, why don't I do this more? The thought popped into my head earlier that morning. I thought, hey, that's a cool idea. I just had to get through that initial pushback, the hesitancy of, well, what's the point? What's the desired outcome of a hike? Right? After all, this little jaunt's just going to distract you from your work and your progress. But at that moment, I think you have to just shut out reason for a second. You have to remind yourself that there's value, period. Otherwise, we open the door for rationalizing. We talk ourselves out of some of life's beautiful secrets. Sometimes you have to just go. And as I made my way down this trail further and further, I started to feel better. I felt reassured. Like I had something that I otherwise wouldn't have had. Something that's my own. And maybe that is it. Maybe that alone is the reason for everything. To collect those incredible things, large and small, that we might not have had. After all, isn't life just an accumulation of memories, of experiences that are spread out like a choose-your-ending children's book? And with so much control over the outcome, I think that matter deserves my attention. In order to acquire the good stuff, whether it's in a different location or context or time in my life, I still learn again and again that to get that, we have to leave some things behind. And that's the essence of life. You usually get out what you put in. And I think about that a lot. I think about the forks in the road I've come across, those same ones, the life-altering decisions. I guess it's only human. Walking away from that promising career that I'd spent my whole life building towards. Every once in a while, sure, I miss the security. Leaving the city and the people that made my life what it was, it still haunts me from time to time, trading permanence and structure for the freedom to condense my life's work into a laptop and take it anywhere in the world. But empowerment can be lonely, right? And I guess I can't help that in the midst of those situations, the easy decision always feels like the wrong one. I've just been pulled by the upside. I gravitate towards this grandiose version of what life could be on the mark that I hope to make. And to me, the scariest thing has always been not having the courage to see more, to explore. The phrase, what if, has always been my adversary, the monster in the closet, and it's a costly one to slay. Right? But life is both suffering and infinite beauty. And it's like you have to choose where you're going to endure pain and why that matters so that you can climb the mountain that means everything to you, that makes life worth it. In other words, meaningful discomfort now or painful regret later. And I strongly believe that life is about pursuing something meaningful. And even the triviality of a hike wants to remind me of this truth. I could be at home playing guitar, watching Netflix, relaxing. I mean, that would have been easier. But there's only one way to catch that sunrise over the trees. And that way is not Netflix. All those beautiful views, they require an output of energy to reach them. They come with fear of something going wrong, and in doubt that perhaps the turn you made wasn't the best one, and that's okay. But I believe that happiness, to be truly fulfilled, requires trade-offs. And with each step, it becomes easier and easier to understand. For the gym rat, it's the discipline and the belief, knowing that muscles break down so that they can be built up. For the relationship to flourish, it's overcoming disagreements, accommodating the needs of that person that you love, so that they can be the last thing you see before you fall asleep. For the free spirit, it's walking away from what you know in pursuit of something that excites and invigorates, even if you're not entirely sure what it means. It's about enduring one so that you can collect the other. Now, what you choose to endure and what you choose to collect is up to you, but that's what makes life such a beautiful ride. A roller coaster taking you through lows to reach highs into darkness to see how life-changing the light is when it pushes its way through. Little decisions that become the collage that explodes off the paper when you step back and look. That's what you get back when you make a point to see more. That's why my love affair with the trivial and the mundane lights my path. It's not just a little thing. It's a microcosm of my everything. It's my saying yes to the opportunity that we work so hard to ignore in an effort to avoid inconvenience. But a life worth living is not always convenient. You could even argue at times it should be inconvenient, because the higher the climb, the more we give of ourselves, the more precious the world looks from the top down. In the challenging times, the things we sacrifice and leave behind, they're not so much a part of the picture as the paint on your palette. That in breaking down, you can now recreate using your own ideals, metrics, and guidelines, a world that you now have the ability to transform. That's why life to me is nothing more than color, decisions nothing more than paint, steps nothing more than brush strokes, and life, well, life is nothing and everything. Which, as the morning breeze reminds me, is a decision that is entirely my own. So imagine years from now, way down the road, you're older, sitting on your front porch, kind of fists propped up under your chin, you're staring out and thinking about your life. You're thinking about the decisions you made, the things you did and didn't do. What would you be thinking? What would you change? Would there be regrets? Now, there's a lot of research around this topic, and in one of the most important books written on it by Bronnie Ware talks about the regrets of the dying. And one of them is wishing I had the courage to live a life true to myself. Right, so you're sitting there, you're looking out and you're imagining, what if you acted differently? What if you tried? What if you started? And you go back to that moment where you were looking fate in the eye and you had to make that decision, right? That singular decision. It showed its face repeatedly, but the decision more or less remained the same. It was vulnerability or safety. Choose one. Vulnerability or safety. Safety, that innate desire to not disrupt or challenge the way things are. Even when you know in your core there's more out there. See, safety is the wolf in sheep's clothing. Watching life happen through a window is incredibly safe. But it means you're forfeiting the essence of life in exchange for a front row seat to watch others live it. It means you don't capture that adrenaline that drives us. You don't take part in the emotion that excites us. It means you don't meet the people who would change your life, and you don't see the places that would take what you know of reality and transform it. No, equating safety with contentment is the product of outdated thinking, an outdated operating system. It's indicative of a way of looking at the world that used to be life or death, but now in 2020, in modern day society, it's regret. And the first step in changing something is to become aware of your current circumstance. It's to realize you're not wrong or guilty for thinking small or taking a back seat to fear. That's what humans do. It's our default setting. But it's your fault if you don't do anything to change it. It's your fault if once recognized you don't pick up the pieces and create a different narrative. You know, I always say the most important changes we can make, they're simple. They're not easy, but they are simple. And that road to something new always starts with seeing beyond the confines of the world that you've accepted for yourself. Understanding the reality that dictates your reasoning, thought patterns, and decision making can change. Because, my friends, if you can remember one thing and one thing only, it's this. Fear is not the enemy. It is the ally you need most. Inaction is the enemy. Doubt is the enemy, not fear. Seneca says we suffer more often in imagination than reality. Mark Twain has says, do the thing you fear most, and death of fear is certain. It's like jumping into a pool on a hot day. You get a second or two of discomfort before you can acclimate into something better. See, people are stronger than they think they are. They are adaptable. They are resilient. But to see this, we must move beyond the stories in our head. So back to that rocking chair, you're thinking back, that fork in the road, and maybe you choose the challenging path, the one that scares you, and maybe you fall flat on your face. But you get up a little smarter, a little better equipped, and you keep going. And maybe you fall and you fail again and again, and then comes the criticism. But you see that maybe criticism doesn't kill you. In fact, it does nothing if you don't let it. And again, you pick yourself up and you carry on. And you pick up some allies along the way. You expand your skill set. You drive towards mastery. And day in, day out, you continue to fall, to trip. But eventually you look back and you see something you haven't seen before. Distance. And you realize you are not the same person you once were. You realize what you have right now, simply through a process of falling and rising again, you have redefined your existence. You've redefined what's possible. You've redefined the people, the places, the things that matter. And it dawns on you that falling, that fear, that the unknown wasn't the problem, that's not scary, it's just part of being better. It's the cost of greatness. You've been looking at things wrong, hiding from exactly the thing you should have been running towards, allowing into your life the very things that held you down, making you think comfort was the goal when it was shackling your feet to the ground, and advising that spectating was a good thing. No, not you. And when you sit down on that rocking chair and you look out, thinking of the life you made, let it be one of adventure. The failures that made you stronger, the wandering that unveiled life's beauty, and the ends that became beginnings, because that is the essence of a life truly